You are not lazy. You are unstable. Not emotionally unstable. Identity unstable. And that instability is scaring you. You wake up and something feels off. The urgency that used to drive you is gone. The pressure that used to push you doesn't work. The goals that once obsessed you feel distant. You keep trying to force the old version of you to come back. It won't, because that version is collapsing. And here's the part you don't want to admit. You don't miss your old discipline. You miss your old certainty. Certainty about who you were. Certainty about what you wanted. Certainty about how you moved. Right now, you are between identities. And the brain hates between. So it calls it laziness. It calls it inconsistency. It calls it failure. But what you're experiencing is neurological reorganization. The problem isn't that you've stopped moving. The problem is you don't recognize who's moving anymore. Let's get specific. You sit down to work. You know the task. You know the steps. You even know the consequences of not doing it. But something inside doesn't respond. Not distraction. Not rebellion. Flatness. You scroll without interest. You replay conversations without resolution. You feel detached in rooms you used to dominate. That heaviness in your chest? That low-grade mental fog? That's cognitive friction. Your old identity ran on urgency, fear, validation, proving. Those emotional triggers produced action. Now they don't. So you interpret the silence as weakness. But it's not weakness. It's mismatch. Your behavior system is still wired to an identity you no longer fully believe in. So every action feels forced. That's why productivity feels heavy. That's why social dynamics feel off. That's why motivation spikes and crashes. You are trying to execute from a personality that is expiring. And expiration feels like failure when you don't understand it. Here's what's happening underneath. Your brain builds identity patterns through repetition. I am driven. I am the reliable one. I am the ambitious one. I am the strong one. Those statements aren't just thoughts. They're neurological shortcuts. Your nervous system organizes behavior around them. But when your beliefs start shifting quietly, those shortcuts destabilize. You outgrow approval. You outgrow fear-based ambition. You outgrow proving yourself. And when the emotional fuel changes, the engine stalls. Not permanently, temporarily. This is why motivation disappears before clarity appears. Dopamine isn't just pleasure. It's prediction. When your brain doesn't know who you're becoming yet, it reduces reward signals. Translation. Things feel flat. Most people panic here. They assume they've regressed. So they try to revive the old identity. They go back to overworking, overcommitting, overperforming. But it feels hollow. Because you can't sustainably act from a version of yourself you no longer align with. The nervous system would rather pause than lie. So it pauses. That pause feels like stagnation. It's actually recalibration. Now, we shift this. If your old motivations don't work anymore, that's data. If certain conversations feel shallow, that's data. If goals feel misaligned, that's data. You are not losing drive. You are losing false fuel. Growth feels like grief because you are losing familiarity. Familiar routines. Familiar roles. Familiar versions of yourself. The brain equates familiarity with safety. So when familiarity dissolves, it sends discomfort. Not as punishment, as protection. This is the phase where most people shrink. They lower their standards. They return to old environments. They perform the old personality to regain comfort. That is regression. Staying in the discomfort is evolution. Instead of asking, how do I get my old drive back? Ask, who am I becoming that makes the old drive obsolete? That question changes everything. Because identity-driven action is quieter. It doesn't scream. It doesn't chase. It doesn't prove. It builds deliberately. The flatness you feel is space being created. Space for a new self-concept. But you don't get to skip the in-between. You don't get fireworks during reconstruction. You get ambiguity. And if you can tolerate ambiguity without labeling it failure, you accelerate the rebuild. Stop trying to feel like your old self. Start observing what no longer fits. That's your blueprint. Here's the compression. You are not lazy. You are between identities. Between who you were and who you're building. That gap will feel like confusion. It will feel like detachment. It will feel like low motivation. Do not interpret the dip as collapse. Interpret it as construction. Stop resurrecting your old identity. Choose the next one and act from it. Even if the emotion hasn't caught up yet. Decide who you are becoming. Then move like it.